Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWireTV interview. I'm joined today by John Boesen. He's the Group CTO at Symbion Holdings. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Alex. Great to be here.
So, John, can you please start at the beginning and tell us the brief history of MyNetPhone, which is the company that sort of preceded Symbio, I guess, and how it has evolved over the past 20 years to become Symbio Holdings?
Yeah, look, it's a pretty cool story, a fairly cool, inspiring Australian tech story, to be honest with you. And it started back in 2002 when two entrepreneurs got together, Andy Fung, who is now on our board of directors, and Renee Sugo, who's our current group CEO.
Yeah, I remember.
And
I remember being at the Harris Street offices, and they had little rooms there with little portable air conditioners and huge pipes. And I don't know if you were there at the time, but I remember when it's founded, and it certainly has grown incredibly.
look, and that is a common story I get when I talk to what I call veterans in the tech space like ourselves, because they did know my net phone back in those days. And look, the vision that Renee and Andy had at the time was they thought that voice over IP technology was going to, take over the world and replace the world. And look what's happened 20 years later. VoIP is very much a core offering in almost every single technology, UCaaS, CPaaS product on the market. But it was also inspiring because at the time, these guys were going up against, Telstra, which was like the largest telco at the time, the 800-pound gorilla, and Optus as well. Optus came around about 1991. And there were two big giants there that obviously had built and invested building up their networks across Australia. And here's my net phone starting out with two folk with a vision and a dream of bringing VoIP technology to Australia. And that's very much what the team did. And they really disrupted the market from the very beginning. And, they were going up against, conversations that had, ISDN in them and PSTN in them, which was the old analog network, which is all dead now, and trying to basically sell this voice over IP offering to their customer base. But it took another 6 years. So from 2002 to 2008, they built their own network, and they went public in 2006. So they got some funding there to accelerate that build out. But effectively, my net phone became a carrier. So we were interconnected with the other carriers. And what that enabled M&F to do was to start to purchase phone numbers from the licensing body, which was ACMA, and then they could resell those phone numbers. And around about the same time, Skype came along. So Skype formed in 2003, if my memory serves me correctly. And I think most of us probably know Skype in the tech community. And they approached M&F, my net phone at the time, and said, "Hey, look, we know what you're doing. It's really cool. We're getting into this Skype thing. Would you like to partner with us?" And we were the seventh partner globally for Skype to power their experience. And their experience was in Australia, phone numbers that you could buy. So you could pay like $5 and get a phone number in Australia. Well, that phone number was being served through the MyNet phone network. So that was a really cool achievement. And then over those years, the company started to go through its organic growth, and we were bringing on other technology partners, which I'll get to later on. And, we started to go through an acquisition pathway. So we started to acquire Telecom New Zealand International voice business from Spark, which is added global calling capability to our offering. We then went into New Zealand domestically. So we took our Australian network, we built a network in New Zealand around about 2017. And more recently, we took our technology into Singapore just last year, 2021. And that was a fairly big milestone for us. Along the way, we also picked up a few other companies to add other various capabilities like Conference Call International. Actually, this was a conferencing service I used 10 years ago in some of my other jobs where I had a little calling card and, you get on a conference call. Well, that was Conference Call International. They had about 90% of the market back then. And that was also an M&F group company. But it's really been through some hyper growth over the last 5 to 7 years. We're now 500 customers strong. We do about 1 billion minutes worth of voice every month, which is pretty amazing now. We've got three networks, as I said now, 6.5 million phone numbers on the network. And, we're about 220 odd points of interconnect around the world now with our network. So it's a really, really cool success story, which not a lot of people know about, but hopefully we're going to learn a little bit more about in the next half hour or so.
Sure. And when you say 500 customers, do you mean corporate customers? Is it 500,000? What do you mean?
Yeah, so 500 customers. So one of the important things with Symbio is that we're not a public-facing consumer B2C business. We are a B2B business. So when I'm talking about 500 customers, I'm talking about the likes of Zoom, like we're on today, Google, Microsoft, Skype, of course, Ring Central, Cisco WebEx. We're talking about all the major telcos, all the major players around the world that have requirements for voice telephony in their product. So in the case of Zoom today, we're interacting over a IP connection. But if I was at the beach, as an example, and I wanted to dial into this call on my mobile phone and I ring the phone number, well, that phone number is on our network and we're powering that experience for Zoom and for all of those other customers that I mentioned. So while we have 500 direct business customers, within that ecosystem, there are literally millions of customers that we're effectively touching every day, but through those partners. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a Skype number that I rarely use, but I still pay for it every month. 028007, and then there's another few numbers I don't want to mention, but it's very cool because it's 8007.
It's a very cool number, and I thank you for your loyalty and thank you for paying those bills. But that's exactly the sorts of experiences that we power, and a lot of people don't know that. So that's cool to hear.
Yeah. Well, I put it on my devices that if you find this, please call this number. I've got my mobile and I have that other number just in case. Because it's I can put Skype on any device and have it ring, so it's just 100%. a handy thing to have. Now let's talk about the realignment of the business into three main divisions. Something you did recently, which aligns with your publicly stated 2030 vision for unified communications. So why was this necessary, and what was the problem that this solved?
Yeah, so we had sold parts of our business off leading up to that Vision 2030 strategy, and they were instrumental in building the business, but it also diluted our focus. So that was creating some internal distractions around where our focus was. We were maturing as a business, and we were starting to see a lot more clearly where our growth vehicles were, which we'll get to in a sec around the restructure and what we created. We were also struggling with focus internally because of this diverse set of businesses that we had acquired. So we were really in a battle, constantly reassessing priorities. That was creating a lot of inefficiencies. It's important to reassess priorities, but we were doing it far too frequently. And it was just leading overall to just inefficiency and not being able to deliver and capture opportunities as we like. So we relaunched the business and the Vision 2030 plan. We went to the market and we really called out the three areas of growth for us, which was around UCaaS, so Unified Communications as a Service, which really is an enterprise and government play. So that's really a sort of a segment that captures E&G. And we're talking about, tools like Microsoft Teams and Cisco WebEx calling as an example. So that's the main products there. We had a communications platform as a service group, or CPaaS group. It's the second vertical we created. And that vertical is the one that's powering those software giants that I spoke about before, those tech giants, the likes of Zoom, Google, Ring Central, so on and so forth. And then the third vertical was one that came about through an acquisition. We acquired a business called Telco in a Box that had a beautiful as-a-service offering for small to medium business. So this is a self-serve portal where a small to medium business can log on and can really start to build a business themselves and resell our capabilities. We look after all of the provisioning, all the services they can order, the billing. It's a one-stop shop for those smaller operating businesses. And that formed the third vertical, which we call TAS, Telco as a Service. So we sort of coined that phrase a couple of years ago, but it's very fitting for that line of business. So they were the three verticals that we created, and that's brought about a lot of focus within the group.
So I guess the next obvious question is, how did the Symbio divisions react to these changes? And, what were the immediately noticeable returns on investment from doing this, and what's yet to come?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because we, in the product and technology space, you're constantly wanting to introduce measures to measure your effectiveness. And there's theses everywhere about, what's the best method for this. When we were doing the restructure, we looked at it from a number of lenses. So first of all, we looked at our people and we said, what does it mean for them around this restructure? Now, even those individuals that ended up being acquired through our divestments that we made, these individuals actually responded extremely positively because they could see internally that we weren't giving them the love that we needed to do. So even those individuals that have moved on and are working for and growing the businesses that we were looking after, they responded very positively to the change. So that was a really great news story. For those that were in the business, we also saw a lack of focus by individuals, and we also saw a lot of frustration by certain teams. And with the restructure, that's now brought about a couple of things. It's brought about a lot of internal promotion. So we've had to restructure our group, and we've actually filled all of our positions today, senior positions that we created through internal hire, which is fantastic. So that's created a lot of growth opportunity for our staff. And we're now starting to get to some other roles where we're bringing that talent from externally. So from a people perspective, it was positively and enthusiastically received, which is always great. And obviously from a board perspective, we had the full support of the board. They understood why we were doing this and the importance of that growth mindset that we had and the importance of making sure that we had focus. The ROI aspect is a really key metric for us. And, we measure it again in a number of ways. So we look at employee engagement, mentioned that already. We do things like team health checks. So we have, we don't wait for the 6 monthly health checks in technology. We'll do a 2 monthly pulse check, or we'll ask, all the teams the same question every couple of months, and we get a feeling for how the teams are operating. Obviously, there's the boring financial metrics as well that you've got to have. But the most important one is customer engagement, because at the end of the day, we're here to deliver a great experience to our customers, which, as I said before, aren't end users, but we are dealing with the B2Bs. And we monitor, we have a very extensive CX program, customer experience program, where we're measuring our success by the feedback they deliver us. And for us, that's our key metric. And since we've been measuring both pre and post the restructure, we're seeing that continuing to climb. And I think it's climbing because there's 3 CEOs now effectively running those 3 lines of business that are really applying a lot of focus to that. So it's still early days, but it's a key metric that we're going to be monitoring moving forward.
Yeah, and there's a 4th division that you created called the Core Technology Group. So, why was this division needed? And this division must also have been, solving. There must have been like issues that were delayed or taking time. And this division is like, right, time to fix that, because we now have everything sort of split and organized. People know what their roles are in a much better way. And you must, there's, when you talk about customers, there's internal customers too. So they must be much happier as well.
Yeah, that's a great call out, Alex. We talk a lot internally about our internal customers. They could be people in other teams that you're interfacing with. It could be other departments like operations, finance, legal, and what have you. So we put a lot of focus on internal customers, but you're absolutely right. Core was there to predominantly achieve a couple of things. It was there to make sure that as a group we had governance and consistency across these other divisions that we've created, because effectively we have moved technology resources into these lines of business that have direct reporting lines into those verticals. So while that's important to address the focus and the accountability and the responsibility aspects, as a technologist, it also presented a lot of danger, because we didn't want these teams going off and being a little bit reckless and duplicating things that we already had, or maybe creating inefficiencies, such as creating their own 24/7 monitoring group and paying them around the clock to monitor certain critical infrastructure. So Core was created to look after the governance aspect, to oversee the security aspects of our platform, to oversee the architecture aspects of that platform. But it was also to identify the reusable building blocks, the Lego blocks of technology that we could see could be used to help speed up and also solve some of the lines of business problems. So Core is a group of technologists. We have infrastructure, we have SysOps, DevOps, security engineers, architecture engineers, and our remit has sort of almost transformed into becoming an internal professional services organization, which is quite unique, I think. So we're remodeling our thinking and our processes to act like a professional services company, but with the advantage that, one, we know our strategy better than anybody else. Two, we know the tech stack, which we have built from the ground up over the last 20 years. Something very unique about Symbio is that we have actually built all of our IP. We don't go out and use third-party products if we can avoid it. We've built it all in-house. So a lot of that technology sits within Core. And they're really the key main things for why Core was created. And it's also created some challenges too, but I'm sure we're going to get to that.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking about how, most people only use like 10 or 20% of the features of their smartphones, or Microsoft Word, for example, and even Albert Einstein famously said we only use 10% of our brain power. And it must be the same for companies. I mean, you were just sort of saying, people are creating shadow IT or paying for some sort of monitoring service when you've already got it. And it's about knowing that. And I guess the core group and you as the group CTO sort of now have that new visibility and can make sure that you're maximizing use of all of your resources as much as possible to maximize everyone's time and what they're being paid and the value to the company.
100%, Alex. Yeah, spot on. And that's also brought about a change in my role as well, because previously I was looking after directly all of the technology resources, and it's a very complex business behind the scenes. But now my role has changed to still do that, but to a lesser degree. I'm now partnering with the CEOs, as you would expect a professional services company to do, for me to understand their strategies. But it also allows me, and I'm able to see things from that ivory tower perspective and help connect up information and remove the silos that otherwise might surface.
Yeah, well, the general surveying the battlefield.
100%.
Now, you probably mentioned some answers to this next question, but what was the process like in deciding to make these changes? I mean, you must have had to have acknowledged or seen that there was a problem in how things were being managed, decided that, okay, well, we've got to do this. What inspired you from what you've seen in other companies, and was there any resistance to this change? And as you sort of were saying before, what have been some of the downsides or the new challenges that have appeared for you?
So I think for me, being a technologist, the model that came to mind as we were evolving as a business over the last 3 years was the Spotify model, a very well-known model. Atlassian have written some blogs about it on their sites, where it talks about this concept around tribes and guilds and chapters and these types of things, and it goes into explaining the roles of these different groups within the organization. We actually drew on that because it was really solving a similar problem to what we had. So we wanted to create focus and accountability in a vertical. We wanted to bring together a diverse set of resources, a full stack set of resources, not just within technology, but in operations and legal and finance and infrastructure. So we saw a lot of parallels with the Spotify model. So that was a heavy influence in the way that we went about structuring our restructure. And it was it was really designed around, how can we be as efficient as possible, but also deliver things as quickly as possible. So that was a big influence in that. But we also ran some internal experiments as well. So we ran a couple of projects in the way that we envisaged our final state to be. So we said, okay, before making the big bet, let's run a few test cases. Now, we did choose a couple of projects that were in the sort of multi-million-dollar space, but we ran those over a period of around about 9 to 12 months. So they weren't long-lived projects, but we saw very early on that the focus and the accountability and the way the teams were operating and the ways that they were moving with speed and they were self-organizing and they were just getting the job done was far surpassing what we had done in some of our other projects. So a combination of the Spotify model and all the research and learnings from that and a little bit of our own testing, we ended up coming up with the design. But the resistance wasn't really an issue because we've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years and more recently our Chief People Experience Officer who's joined us, Kathy Doyle, we've been focusing a lot on our internal culture, and we've always been one, even at an executive level, to be very open, very transparent, very honest, put your hand up when you make a mistake, learn from that, move on, be better than yesterday. So that culture has really helped us through this change because very early on, we didn't have all the answers. And in fact, even the technology team will recall several presentations where I was giving where the first presentation was, look, this is a straw man and this could completely change over the next 6 weeks. But you're seeing real time what I'm thinking, and I really want your feedback. And we ran that process across the whole group. And I think that really helped take away a lot of while there's still uncertainty, it helped people transition the change. And that was a really big success factor for us. So, and something that I would recommend any organization before embarking on any type of change program is to look at their culture first and see if they're ready for something like that. Yeah.
So what is a day in the life of a group CTO of Symbio?
It's pretty diverse in my role now, because it was always diverse, but now it's more so, because we're dealing with a very diverse technical stack. There's a lot of things behind the scenes. We look like a software company to our customers, these big global tech giants that I spoke about. But we hide all the complexity of being a telco, and we deal with telcos in legacy technology stacks and things that are 30, 40 years old. So that's a really diverse set of technology right there. We've got a large infrastructure platform. We built networks in New Zealand and Singapore and Australia, of course, and we're announced that we're launching. I had to check if we'd actually announced this, but we have. We're launching into Malaysia. That's our next market that we're going to. And so we're dealing with a very large physical infrastructure base. We effectively run our own private and we leverage public cloud, but we have our own private cloud infrastructure as well. So every single day, every meeting's different, every conversation's different. There's lots of opportunity, as I'm sure you can imagine, during the last 2 years. It's been absolutely crazy. There's a great COVID story I don't have time to talk about in detail, but we effectively added 7 years worth of network capacity in the space of 4 months during COVID, which was just unbelievable for us. So it's created a lot of opportunity. It's chaotic, it's fast paced, but it's a lot of fun. And I love working with the diverse set of engineers that we have and people across the business. And to be honest with you, I love seeing them grow and achieve things that they think they can't do when they set out, and then 3, 6, 12 months later, look what they've achieved. That's really fun to see.
So how do you see Symbio evolving over the next couple of years? And what will universal communications look like in the 2030s when everyone is wearing AR glasses and spending lots of time in the metaverse?
I think, look, we laugh about it now, but I really believe that it's
coming.
100%. So, well, look, in terms of Symbio, our strategy is pretty clear, and we've been aggressively attacking the market with this messaging, and we're really focusing on deploying, or what I'm calling terraforming, country after country in Asia Pacific, in the Asian region, Southeast Asia region. So we're really wanting to take all of the intellectual property that we've built up over the last 20 years and get it to new countries that don't have the technologies that we have. They're still operating the way Australia was 20 years ago, with a very closed telco network, non-API capable, capabilities to access purchasing phone numbers and porting phone numbers and all those sorts of things. So our strategy is pretty clear. So we're going to continue to grow and terraform as many countries as we can. In terms of where I see the future of all things voice and UCaaS, look, voice is our primary method of communication, right? Globally, we have different dialects, but at the end of the day, voice is here to stay. But the phone number is also, if you think about it, it's a single global real-time identifier that commonizes every country on the planet. So it's really those two things, I think, are going to be underpinning future UCaaS innovations. WhatsApp, for instance, is tied to your phone number. So as an example, so I think we're going to continue to see leveraging that network. But technology is advancing. Microphone technology is getting better. Noise cancelling is getting better. Miniaturization is getting better. Micro speakers are getting better. Battery life is getting better. All of those things are improving, and I think that's going to create with it a lot of really cool tech advancements. Like this thing I've got on now, it's going to get miniaturized to probably a spec that I might be wearing on my shirt, as an example, and that's just going to create a whole lot of other opportunity. You mentioned in there around the augmented reality and the glasses too. That tech's going to improve as well. And, suddenly we're going to be able to be walking anywhere on, around our houses or around our suburbs or anywhere, and we're going to be able to have a quality conversation where they can hear us crystal clear, we can hear them crystal clear, and maybe there's even some overlaid video happening as well. So we're still seeing. Look, that's clearly where it's going, Alex, isn't it? You know, we can see it now, but I think when is that going to happen? Yeah, that's a tough one. So, you know, but definitely within the next 10 years, I think we're going to see some really cool stuff. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the rumors are that Apple will launch a VR headset first, maybe this year, maybe next, and then potentially by 2025 they'll have their AR glasses. But I remember in the Minority Report movie, the bad guy, his famous actor, I can't remember what his name is now, but if you look up the bad guy in Minority Report, he had this headset which was like a Nokia branded headset, which was basically meant to be the phone all in one. Now, we have, of course, the AirPods and Jabras and all sorts of different devices that we can put into our ears. But I got an invitation yesterday as we were recording this from one of the companies going to MWC, and they've got a pair of headsets which has got an eSIM. It's a 4G phone all inside the headset itself. So I thought to myself, well, that's that Minority Report gizmo coming true.
It's absolutely.
Yeah, and I know, of course, I said to them, well, I'd love to have a briefing. I'm not going to be at MWC, unfortunately, but what's the battery life? What's the SAR rating? Is it radiating your brain right there? What's battery life? Are there any voice apps? Because they were talking about how you could have translation and text messages, things read out to you. So, the one of the things that is for sure is that whatever the future we think is going to come, it normally goes off in different tangents and surprises us. But normally it's what we want. It's quite good, and we're glad to have it. I mean, I was reading something else the other day that said if you said in 2007 to a bunch of people that in 2022 we'd all be looking at smartphones and tablets and have all these things in our ears and all that sort of stuff, it might have seemed like some sort of sci-fi movie. And yet, it's all we don't blink now. We take it for granted. In fact, we spend too much time looking at our phones and gadgets and things.
we definitely do. Yeah. I agree with all of that, Alex. 100%. Yeah.
Now, can you share a memory of your first computer and the first time that you made a VoIP call?
Yeah, okay. So this is probably giving away my age a little bit. The Commodore 64, trusty Commodore 64 was my first PC as a young one. I probably would have been, I don't know, maybe about 9 or so, about 8 or 9 or so. And I remember the first game was on a data cassette. It was Ghostbusters. That was the game that came out. And I had a bit of a warm, fuzzy feeling where I saw the relaunch of Ghostbusters just recently. But Commodore 64 was the first PC I had, and I got into basic programming and did the whole Hello World thing, all that sort of stuff. The first time I made a VoIP call was actually using Skype, similar to yourself. I was young at the time. I don't know. I was probably in my early 20s, possibly, or late teens. Actually, I was in my late teens. And I was wanting to muck around with the tech, and I had some business ideas at the time and thought I'd change the world. And I remember buying a Skype number and getting one in Sydney and one in Melbourne and things like that, which was really cool. So, yeah, that would have been, again, sort of in the late 80s, sometimes like that. But that was a cool time. And I don't think the other interesting thing too with VoIP calls is that a lot of the time you don't know you're making a VoIP call now either. You're dialing a phone number, but you don't know. But that was my first experience with VoIP.
And what is a little bit about your own personal history in the world of tech before you joined Symbio?
Yeah, I had an interesting career trajectory. I started out as an embedded software engineer, so I learned about working at a very low level on hardware devices and understanding at that level how they were writing device drivers and dealing with interrupts and all those sorts of things, and that was really cool. And that taught me a lot of really important sort of fundamentals on how to write really secure and stable and performant software. I did that for a long time. I then got into leading teams, and then got into architecture and led a PMO, project management office, for a little while, as well as I was broadening my skill sets, and then ran some innovation studios and creative studios, and worked with artists and animators and all sorts of really cool things. And then got into telco and did some gaming space, and then went back into telco again. So I've had a very interesting upbringing in the tech side, but we really got a passion for technical leadership probably about 10 years ago, and realized that I was possibly a better tech leader than I was an actual tech doer, and then transitioned into that. So I can hold my chops with the devs, and I'm still coding and I'm still mucking around, but in things like JavaScript and React, and I like to stay on the tools a little bit as a hobby. But yeah, that's been my upbringing. Yeah.
So what are the best pieces of advice that you've received in life to help you get where you are today?
Wow. Well, I can't go past my dad because he always said to me at a young age, always have options. So, that's always stuck with me throughout my whole life. And I still do very much today coach others around that. But a really cool moment happened about 10 years ago where I was fortunate enough to be working for a company who hired a guy by the name of Ted Harsey. Now, Ted Harsey was an ex-Microsoft employee, but he was one of the four horsemen of the Xbox. He was actually one of the four who internally pitched it to Gates at the time to basically take Microsoft's DirectX technology and basically put it into a console and effectively compete against the PS2 that was rumored to be in development. And so, a guy with those sort of creds, I was just in awe of meeting. But I was going through a bit of a rough time because I was running an innovation studio at the time, and innovation's one of those things where it's a real battle to get people to see a vision and what you want to achieve. But once you've done it and years on, they then go, oh yeah, that's cool. And there was a sign up on his wall in his office, and it was a German philosopher. I can't remember his name precisely, but the quote went along the lines of all truth passes through three stages. First, it's ridiculed. Secondly, it's violently opposed. And third, it's accepted as self-evident. Don't quote me exactly on that. But he had changed it to innovation. And it just connected with me 100%. And it taught me that what I was going through was what you should be going through, and to stay true and push through. And it taught me resiliency, and it taught me to stay true to a vision. And still to this very day, I try and live by that. And I guess as Group CTO, you need to do that because a lot of the time you're talking about strategies that are 3 or 5 or 7 years out and having these crazy visions that people in the now are saying that can't be done, that's not possible. But if everyone took that mindset, we wouldn't be where we are today, anywhere. So yeah, that's probably the biggest sort of learning journey I had along the way.
Yeah, on a friend's fridge, there's a sign that says, "Those that say it can't be done should get out of the way of those who are doing it."
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, so true, so true.
So what is your final message to iTWire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers and partners?
Yeah, look, I think, Symbio is going through an exciting time at the moment. So, we're ultimately here to serve our customers and deliver a great experience to them. We're here to hide the complexity from them and do that better than anybody else. And we focus on the customer. And I think all of us in technology roles or even non-technology roles should always be thinking about your customers. And Alex, as you said, whether it's internal or external. But we're really excited to, help power these innovations, some of them which we've spoken about today, Alex, and really drive that experience. But the next time that the listeners today are possibly answering an Uber call because the driver's lost, or maybe a Deliveroo meal that's gone walkabout and you get a phone number on your screen, or maybe you're selling a car on car sales and you need a phone number for that moment, you now know that number's being powered by Symbio. So spread the word, and if you're after a job, come and talk to us and we'll see what we can do.
There's clearly great symbiosis at Symbio.
There is. So
well,
we'll talk to marketing about that one.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I'm sure they've thought of it. Well, John Boesen, Group CTO of Symbio Holdings, thank you so much for your time. I'm just sort of reminded of that the old sprint. Can you hear me now? I can definitely hear you, and I'm sure everyone watching can hear you as well. And it's been wonderful to see how MNF has grown into Symbio and the amazing success you've had over the past 20 years. So congratulations, and I hope we can speak again in the future.
No, absolutely, Alex. Thanks very much. Really enjoyed the chat today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.